All right, well, we got to talk about these Xbox layoffs and what that means for the platform. Spoiler alert, I don't think it's anything good. But, it seems like Microsoft is making some serious moves, and combined with some of the other things they've been doing over the past couple of years or so, the picture is coming into focus for me as to what the state of Xbox really is. And so we're going to talk about that and more. Before we do, gameplay today is Fumes. If you like the post-apocalyptic driving shooting game, this is definitely going to be right up your alley. There's a free demo on Steam, so definitely check that out. So let's just jump right in here. This comes from Windows Central. And Microsoft continues Xbox layoffs with jobs cut at King, Turn 10, ZeniMax Media, and more. Read Phil Spencer's notes to staff. And that's why I included this article, because it does have the email he sent out. So just a couple of things highlighted here. You can definitely check out the full article. It's worth the read, and I'll include that in the description too. King with Bloomberg reported that around 10% of the studio is being cut, or 200 jobs. Now that's a fairly small amount. 10% is not a huge layoff, and with King, it's a mobile developer. I mean, it's Candy Crush. They can afford to cut 10% and work just fine. So that one is kind of a no-brainer for King. The other ones that are more interesting, though, down here, Rare's Everwild, which was first announced all the way back in 2019, is being canceled as part of the cuts. Windows Central can corroborate this closure, as well as confirm the closure of the initiative and the cancellation of Perfect Dark. So you can see they're shutting down things in development left and right. I think probably the initiative makes sense. Perfect Dark definitely makes sense. And Rare's Everwild, I didn't really hear much about Everwild, so it might have just been something that was not well marketed or talked about, and maybe the lack of buzz around it might have been the reason for dropping that. The other interesting thing that they did was they killed 50% of Forza Motorsports developer Turn 10. That's a big cut. Now, granted, Forza Motorsports doesn't need to change a whole lot between iterations of it, but cutting half the staff, I think they're going to find that they're gonna lose sales because of that cut, not just because people are tuning out of Forza. I think that's going to be a a problem, because they were really pushing Forza for a while there, and I think they were trying to maybe justify it, having the staff that they did, and now they've realized that they can't justify it for some reason, so they're canning half the staff. That's a big cut, though. That's going to hurt Turn 10. It's going to hurt Forza Motorsport. So if you're a Forza fan, you might see some lack of quality in future iterations. I would say definitely hang on to the ones you got right now. So then continuing on, there's big cuts to ZeniMax Media's marketing team in London, UK, as well as Rockville, Maryland. And they've also canceled ZeniMax Online Studios' new IP. I think that's going to be that's supposed to be the MMO that they were working on. So that one's being dropped as well. So you can see they're canning a lot of projects here. They're canning quite a lot of projects that were rather expensive, and I think the reason why is because they don't want to continue on with those very expensive projects, only to have them not meet sales goals, not meet the expectations that they had for them, which is something that they've been seeing a lot. Xbox is seeing a lot of that over the past couple of years, and so this is probably an effort to curtail the bleeding a little bit. So continuing down a little further, multiple studios at Activision working on Call of Duty are also impacted, including Raven Software and Sledgehammer Games. So they're trimming the fat everywhere, more in some areas than on others. Like King versus Forza Motorsports. I mean, that's quite a difference there. But yeah, so let's just get into the message that he sent here. I got a couple of things to read here, and then I'll talk about actually what this means for Microsoft, what this means for Xbox. So To position gaming for enduring success and allows us to focus on strategic growth areas, we will end or decrease work in certain areas of the business and follow Microsoft's lead in removing layers of management to increase agility and effectiveness. What that basically means is they're trimming the fat. They're trying to remove cost. It's not about whenever you hear a company laying people off to increase agility and effectiveness, it's to lower costs. That's what it is. It never makes things more agile or more effective. It should. And if they actually did these layoffs in the way that they said they were, like removing layers of management would be a smart thing. But at the point where Xbox is, they've probably got more layers of management than they know what to do with, and removing a couple isn't going to make any difference at all. You still have a very long chain to report up for an issue. There's just that chain of command is miles long, so trimming a couple of links off of it is not going to make a difference. Going further here, we must make choices now for continued success in future years, and a key part of the strategy is the discipline to prioritize the strongest opportunities. We will protect what is thriving and concentrate effort on areas with the greatest potential while delivering on the expectations the company has for our business. This focused approach means we can deliver exceptional games and experiences for players for generations to come. So again, let's translate that. They're removing things that are not going to make money, and they're keeping the things that do. And that contradicts his previous statement of removing middle management to increase agility and effectiveness. No, they're dropping projects. They're dropping teams that are not producing. And that is clear in how they're doing these layoffs. They may very well be removing layers of management, sure, but again, these are all cost-cutting measures. These are all, anything that doesn't make money has to go kind of a decision, and that is desperate. So you can read the full thing here. Like I said, I'll have the link in the description so you can check the full message out from Windows Central. Now, what does this really mean for the future of the console, though? I think that, first of all, they're bracing for tough economic times. That's first and foremost. But with what they've been doing over the past few years, it tells me that they tried to, acquire as much intellectual property as possible, and that gambit did not pay off. They got all these beloved properties, and now they're doing things with them that are not popular with the fans of those properties, and they're losing money because they don't know how to make a Perfect Dark game, for example. They're not making the things that Perfect Dark fans would appreciate. It doesn't look like a Perfect Dark game. It doesn't feel like a Perfect Dark game, and people are there's backlash on that, and they're seeing the writing on the wall that, well, we tried to do this and just cash in on these IPs, and just cashing in on these IPs doesn't work. They haven't learned the lesson that as a game developer, you need to have people that are passionate about the thing that they're making. And if that thing is a pre-existing franchise, if it's a very old pre-existing franchise, in the case of Perfect Dark, you can't mess with that recipe. You have to try and maintain as faithful a reproduction of that gameplay, of that story, as you can possibly get. And they didn't do that with Perfect Dark. They didn't do that with a number of titles, and they've been punished for it over and over and over again. And I think that's what they're seeing, is that they can't do this the way they thought they could. They can't just acquire these massive IPs and bring in new people and just pull a cash grab out of thin air for all of these properties and then make millions and billions of dollars. That's not going to work. You have to have people passionate about it. You have to have people invested in that property. And call me crazy, but I think the only people that are really passionate about that project, about that intellectual property, are the original people that worked on it. As soon as you change teams, that property changes. And sometimes it can work out, and most times it doesn't. The time that it worked out was Fallout. When Bethesda picked up Fallout, it became a different thing. It was a very different thing from the original games. The original games were very beloved, but the new games were too. And that move to 3D, that move to basically the the Oblivion engine at the time, the Elder Scrolls approach to Fallout, I guess you could call it. And, that worked very well. That resonated with people. So it can work out in that case. Most cases it doesn't. And they've learned that lesson, and now they're dropping the things that don't work, and the ones that still do work, they're focusing on. Do I think that's a smart thing for them to do? Heck no. They should be finding teams that could do the job, that have that passion, and try and make a new recipe or make a recipe built on the original that can bring in the fans that were passionate about that intellectual property in the first place. But it doesn't seem like they're doing that. It seems like they're just looking for the short-term gains. They're not playing the long game. And, contrary to Phil's statement here, this focused approach means we can deliver exceptional games and experiences for players for generations to come. They're not looking generations to come. They're looking tomorrow. They're looking on the short-term horizon. They're basically just looking to get through to the next platform release. I think that's what they're looking at. And as a good transition over to what I think the bigger picture is, we're going to talk about the next platform because, all this Xbox is everything, Xbox is everywhere, everything is an Xbox thing, kind of tells me that the next Xbox isn't really going to be anything big. It's not going to be a new Xbox. It's going to be a PC that plugs into your TV. And they've basically insinuated it. I don't think they've come out and said it yet, but it's just going to be a PC. It's just going to be a Windows box. And you can see that with their release of they're working with Asus on the ROG Ally X. That is a PC in a handheld. It's running Windows. It can't play Xbox games. It can only play the Windows Store style games, and that's where they're heading. That's what they want to do. They want to make sure that anything that runs Windows can play Windows games, and I think it's gonna bite them. I think it's gonna be a problem because they're like, oh yeah, we can have Steam on this, and we can have all these other things on this. So I think they're kind of abandoning the platform. They're abandoning Xbox as it was and embracing this idea that they're just going to make games for their ecosystem, and whether that ecosystem is Windows and Xbox or it's Steam and Windows, it doesn't matter. They're just going through that approach. And I guess that makes sense because they can make money on licensing Windows for all these third-party manufacturers. So, they do get some kind of money from third-party console sales in that capacity. But if I'm making a console, if I'm making a handheld especially, I think I would rather go with Steam because Steam is open source and Steam is more streamlined. Steam OS is going to run games better than Windows, and there's been comparisons done between the two, and Windows is too much bloat. Even now, with them trimming it down for all of these streamlined handhelds and everything else, it's still too much bloat. It's still way too much. And Steam is always going to outperform it because Steam is built on Linux. And it can be minimized down to the very bare bones so that nothing is running in the background trying to, phone home, as it were, like Windows does constantly now. So I think they're going to see some problems trying to break into that. They're trying to compete with Steam. Straight up, they're trying to compete with Steam. They're trying to build an ecosystem that can compete on that level, that has hardware, that has the storefront that, goes into things in a way of PC gaming, not console gaming. And I think it's going to bite them. But I can understand why they're doing it, because the next thing we're going to look at here, we're going to look at Xbox sales. So here's this chart from VG Charts. This is weekly hardware comparisons for basically just Nintendo Switch, Xbox, and PS5. Xbox X and S and PS5. And Xbox X and S are in red. And you can see back here in 2020, effectively at launch, it fell a little short. Switch is, dominating and has been since time immemorial. Now it's lost its momentum in recent years, but you can see like the yellow is PS5, the red is Xbox, and they started strong. They both started very strong. 1.4 million and 1.2 million sold at launch, and then Xbox started to trail and started to trail even more, and eventually it was outpacing PS5 here, 625 to 325. So that's November 27th. So that's Christmas sales, and but then PS5 started to widen that gap, and you can see that Xbox is going down, PS5 is actually going up. So they're seeing that as a problem. I think that they're seeing an issue with console sales. I don't think that they can beat PlayStation in the next generation, and so they're adopting this everything is an Xbox strategy to try and do something a little different. And it makes sense from a business perspective. It doesn't make sense from a console perspective because they're losing that exclusivity. They're losing that competitive edge of having all these IPs. If they can get really good games for the next console launch, and it's a few years away. I mean, we're talking 2027, 2028. But if they could have a good set of exclusive titles for the next console launch, they could beat PS5, because PS5 hasn't been doing great at launch either. They haven't had the titles that they've had in previous years at launch to really sell those consoles, and both of them have been languishing in this, which makes absolutely no sense, because now they both have this massive collection of intellectual property that they could leverage for those launches. But they're not. I don't think they're going to do it. I might be wrong, but it seems like they're not looking far into the future, and they're not looking at making themselves competitive against the other console to do the launch, and especially with Xbox. PlayStation, I think they've learned their lesson. They're Japanese, though, and they're very different culture over there. They're very tight-lipped about things, and they don't talk about things like this quite the same way as an American company like Microsoft would. So we're not going to hear a lot with what their real plans are. They're not going to share that kind of stuff like we've seen here. But it's interesting to see. They're working on things in the background, and you hear stuff here and there. They hear about the handheld. I think they're taking more of a hybridized approach between Nintendo Switch and PlayStation than Xbox is with going all in on the marketplace, on the Steam style approach, where hardware manufacturers just make stuff for you, and your console doesn't really matter as much. Your console is basically the baseline, which is what Valve is doing with the Steam Deck, and I think that they're going to take that approach, which, again, competing with Valve is as bad or worse than competing with Sony, in my opinion. So they're not stepping up. They're not going to be able to be competitive, be more competitive against Valve than they are with Sony. So I think they're making a bad decision. But that is what it is, and the numbers here certainly would make a company think we need to do something very different for the next console, because we're losing console sales, and we're making all these consoles and we're barely making any money off of them for the first couple of years until the actual hardware goes down in price. So they're abandoning that, and they're approaching things as a platform, not a console manufacturer. And that's, again, gamers will notice. Gamers will say, well, the Xbox is just a PC. I already have one of those. I'm going to go get a PlayStation 6. So, yeah, it's going to bite them, and I think it's going to be a problem. But on the other side, people do already have PCs. People do want to get a handheld gaming unit. And I wouldn't be surprised if you can get Windows games on the Steam Deck. I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of build something in that capacity and try and get it onto the Steam Deck as an avenue for that approach. And it would make perfect sense. It wouldn't be surprising at all that SteamOS could support it, and maybe would. I don't know. We'll see what happens there. But yeah, I mean, you know, it could be a good thing in that capacity where people already have the hardware to play these games. But again, it could be a bad thing because they're basically forfeiting the next generation of the console war for Sony to win the console side of the console war. So that is what it is. It's going to be interesting to see, but I think they're just looking at the near horizon and not the far horizon as to the future of Xbox, and I think it's going to bite them. But that's what I got for you guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. It was a bit of a long one talking about all this stuff, but let me know what you guys think in the comments, and I will talk to you guys later.